Hello, welcome to the Beyond the Questions podcast, because every great conversation starts with a question. We're having real conversations about life with life coaches, and we are anticipating another great episode. So get ready and let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Questions. I am Ericka. I'm one of the coaches on this podcast, and today I am your host for how does someone rebuild trust after life has broken it down? Before we get into this topic, I'd like to briefly introduce myself and the surrounding coaches that are around me. So with my coaching business, I support women who are experiencing trauma, relationship changes, or challenges, or just simply hard life things. And I'm a certified coach, and I'm honored to get to walk alongside of these women. TQ, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure thing, everybody. I'm TQ. As Eric just said, I run TQ Coaching Solutions, and what I get to do is I get to sit with people who are really striving for their goal, but they're finding themselves blocked by fear, self-doubt, and sometimes inaction. And so I get the joy of helping them process through that and walk through so they can grab those goals that they're reaching for. So that's what I love to do.
Thank you. And Kelly?
Yes, so I am Kelly Greco. I'm founder and chief pivot officer of Purposeful Pivot. And my goal is to help accomplished women really get past the hidden cost of being successful and redesigning their next chapter on their own terms and without having to start all over.
Thank you. And Jason?
Yeah, I'm the founder and coach of Jason Roten Coaching. I work with emerging leaders to help them show up in spaces they lead the way they want to. So often young leaders end up reacting instead of responding to the things that are put in front of them. And so my goal is to help them respond with emotional intelligence and the values they want to live.
Thank you all for sharing. And as we get into rebuilding trust, I have a fun opener question for you guys. Now, do any of you garden?
I kill plants.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Yeah, not
This
if I
is
can
going to
help
be
it.
a great question for both of you then. If trust was a house plant, how many times have you killed it and tried to bring it back to life with an apology water?
An apology water. Oh, sorry. That last part, I was not expecting an apology water. Oh, man. Broken trust, if it's house, I don't know. Too many times. More times than I can count at this point.
Yeah, it happens, right? So I do want to start out with the definition of trust. And this is just per the Merriam-Webster dictionary. There's quite a few definitions, actually. Trust is assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. Trust is one in which confidence is placed. Trust is dependence on something future or contingent. And trust is rely on truthfulness or accuracy of someone or something. I know that sometimes I throw big words out there. I don't actually think that I used any big words, while trust is something big to understand. So the first question I want to ask you guys is, what does trust mean to you?
It means that I can move or do something with a person and not wonder if something's going to spin out like bad.
I think it's not having to question somebody else, fully aligned with them, knowing that what they're doing is honest and truthful.
Yeah, I think mine has a lot to do with integrity. Do your actions match your words, both in public and private? And if those things are true, then I can probably trust you. If
Yeah.
your actions and your words don't align, I'm not going to trust.
And that's a really good point, Jason. So looking at trust, it is a noun or a verb, right? And so if we go with verb, right, a verb is an action. So to trust is an action. And sometimes for me, to help me understand something, I can look at it as the opposite, right? So what is the opposite of trust? Withholding, deny, neglect, or even the act of lying. And those actions hurt. And therefore, it makes sense when our trust is broken that it hurts. So then how do we rebuild that? So can any one of you share a moment or an experience, a time in life when your trust was significantly broken by somebody else?
Yeah, I got one. So I'm going way back to like middle school, Twan. Okay. There was a young lady in my class and I thought that I would, ask if she would be my girlfriend, or would you go out with me is what we used to say back then, back in the day. And I got utterly rejected and I was crushed. Okay. I told a certain friend, but I won't say friend's name. I'm keeping you off the internet, friend. And I told it to him. I was like, man, I was just crushed. Bore my soul, right? Just to have somebody share it with. Well, it was around Halloween. We're out, and you gotta understand when we went Halloween candy shop. I mean, it was like shopping. It wasn't like trick or treating. It was like we're getting everything we can get. Okay, and so we were going out, and he and I were going together. And then this third party, I'm not even sure who this kid was, came along, was walking with us. And right there, I can remember it so vividly. We're walking, and my friend starts to tell random dude about this rejection that I got. And I was furious. And so I had this laundry sack of I don't know how many pounds of candy and took it and just threw it and it busted me in the face and it bloodied up. It was terrible.
Oh my gosh.
But I do regret doing that. That's not the way you're supposed to handle trust that's broken. But yeah, that was one of those it felt super significant in the moment. Obviously right now it doesn't really matter. But back then it was a big deal. So.
Well, if I could just dig into that moment a little bit more when your friend broke your trust.
Uh-huh.
What it heard like to me is you were describing this like innate anger just came over you.
Yeah. I saw all red, betrayed, and I had to do something about it, and I used my resources around me.
And you were a middle school aged child, which, okay.
And now it makes for a great story, though. So,
and hopefully you use it to teach anyone you're teaching that that's not how we cope when we get angry and our trust is broken. Well, thank you for sharing that. I might come back to it in just a little bit, but I want the other coaches to be able to answer as well.
I don't know how you follow that story up. I'm not one of those. I picture the like pillowcase exploding, candy bars go everywhere. At the same time, this kid's face explodes.
Wait, did you hit your friend or the other kid? Which one?
I hit my friend.
Yeah.
The other kid, he's just a witness.
Yeah, why would you hit the other kid? He didn't break the trust.
Yeah.
I just need clarification.
No worries. No, I hit everyone. I just went rogue.
you went ballistic.
So I'll stick with the funny stories. So I had a couple buddies, and my mom was out of town, and so we went to the BMX bike track, and we're going to go down the BMX bike track. I've never ridden on an official track before in my life, but I figured, how bad could this be? It's going to be great. We come off the first ramp. I learned very quickly that your back tire should always be below your front tire when you're in the air. Because if not, when your front tire hits, you are going to go over the handlebars. So this was in the East when we didn't wear helmets. And so I slid uphill on the side of my face in dirt and gravel. All I knew when I was done was that my face hurt. Obviously, you can't see yourself. There's no cell phones at that time. So my buddy's like, yeah, you're all right. You got a little scratch, but you'll be fine. Okay, great. So we rode for another hour, rode home. I'm like, man, my face really hurts. I got home and looked in the mirror. I had no flesh from like where my hairline used to be, all the way down this cheek, all the way down my neck. It is like a giant strawberry.
Oh my goodness.
My friend's like, oh, it's just a little scratch. I'm like, dude, there is dirt and rock in my face. And so, so I never trusted my friends again.
Wow.
Like, what do you mean it was a scratch? My mom was gone for the weekend. She came back, my like oozing, like, strawberries, it was gross.
That's what my thought was. Your poor mom.
Trust me, it was minor compared to some of the things I put my mom through. She's a saint.
Well, I think I'm going to pass because I got nothing compared to these two stories. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm
but you
completely
too.
I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. You guys threw me.
Well, still, like, the basis of it was, right, trust was broken. PQ, you had shared something vulnerable with your friend and he just spilled it with somebody else. Jason, your friend
He flat
in
out
his
lied. I love him, but he lied.
okay, yeah, he lied to you. Like, your
Yeah.
face was a gash, not a scratch.
It was missing.
And right. So either using these examples or bigger examples, like, how do you go from that, like, okay, now the trust is broken. How do I even start to rebuild this trust with this person now? What do I do? Or do I?
It is good to build trust. I was thinking back to my story, and I'm like, I don't know that I ever told him anything else that was, like, close to my heart. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're not around each other anymore, but, but, yeah, I don't know that I did. I do think it's important, but, you know, at that time and that age, I don't think I was touching that again.
So do you think at that middle school, potentially high school age that you did continue to slightly trust your friend, but just not with some of the things, like some of those personal things, like in that same type of experience?
Yeah, I mean, we still hung out, I even talk semi-regularly now, but I'd be hard pressed to, like, bare my soul. That was one of those things. I don't think I had been crushed as much to that point, you know what I'm saying? That was probably the worst that I had received, and I just felt like he just didn't care about it, and so that yeah, I didn't wanna go through that again.
So whether you recognized it or not, or can you say that you did recognize that you then chose not to rebuild trust with him?
In that area for sure.
Right, in that area.
Yeah, yeah.
Kelly, and I'm going to throw this to you since those two took up the time with their funny trust answer. If someone has broken your trust before, how have you gone about attempting to rebuild that?
Yeah, well, I think it all comes down to opening the gates of communication again, because I think if somebody ruins, if I no longer trust them, the first thing I do is shut down and I don't talk. And then it just festers and it gets worse. So I think the only way is to open up communication, talk things through. And then if it doesn't work and you still don't trust them, then you just have to be honest and say, maybe this is a relationship that's no longer, valuable to either side. But I think the attempt should be there to at least, try to hear each other's sides, talk it through, and see if there's a way to rebuild.
Yeah. Jason, I see that pondering look.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Adult story of trust broken. My story is adult story of trust broken. My background is I've served inside of churches in a pastoral role. So I have been the youth pastor to two pastors' moral failures. So lots of trust broken. But I think the hardest part, the first time I went through this, I remember sitting in the meeting where the leadership of the church told the pastor, if you will confess in front of the congregation, we will work to restore you. And he confessed to the entire congregation. They fired him on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I will never trust another leadership team again.
Yeah.
And it took years before I ever got to that point. And it wasn't just that group of leaders, it was any leader inside of a church. It came from in that space, it came from seeing healthy leaders do what they're supposed to do, lead the way they're supposed to lead, hold people accountable who need to be held accountable, and beginning to realize we're all people. We're all going to make mistakes along the way. Yet owning those mistakes, acknowledging those mistakes, and and doing everything you can to heal those wounds that you caused shows me that you're trustworthy. I don't think we can walk through life expecting people to not hurt us, right?
Right.
I don't think it's intentional all the time. When it happens, it just happens. But if you own it and you're like, no, I screwed up big time, I messed up. And then you begin to work to rebuild that, to be more honest, to be more transparent, to be more humble, then I'm going to trust you again. But if you're going to walk in arrogance and pride that you didn't make a mistake, then I'm not going to trust you again. So I think it's the humility to own it and then to begin to fix it.
And I think that shows a person's character even more when they admit it. They try to be humble and make up for it. And that says something a lot about rebuilding trust, that they were able to realize that they messed up. Yeah.
Jason, and if you don't mind, just for some clarification questions on who broke your trust, can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Not specifically. Well, you mentioned that two things had happened, yet this person did what he or she needed to do, and then your trust was not only broken by them, but also everybody else, because then they didn't follow their word. Is that what I heard you say?
No, it's more like I didn't, because this group of leaders didn't do what they said they were going to do. I didn't trust any leader inside the church for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And then what did you do specifically to change that about yourself? So, do you understand what I mean by that?
Uh huh.
Okay.
I sat at a distance and watched. I don't think I changed anything about myself. I didn't
Hmm.
feel the need to change anything about myself in that space. But I sat quietly in the back and I watched. So when I left that church, I don't know if I want this on the internet. When I
Well,
left that
I
church,
can.
no, you're fine. When I left that
Okay.
church, I was super angry. So angry, I told my wife I'm never going back to church, period, ever again. This was 2007. My wife is very strong-willed, and so we went to church, and I pretty much destroyed every church we walked into, to the point, like, just so you understand how angry I was, one church brought us homemade chocolate chip cookies, and I threw them in the trash. That's how angry I was. And we landed in a place that was really good. My wife's like, all right, great. We found a church. Now let's go to a marriage Bible study. And I'm like, hard pass. I'll go with you on Sunday. I'm not going to any marriage Bible study. We're good. So we ended up going to marriage Bible study. And the first night we were there, they had everybody go around and say your name, how you met your spouse, and why you were there. I said, hi, I'm Jason. It's my wife, Corey. Told the story of how we met. And as soon as you all prove you're hypocrites, I don't have to come back. So the faster we can get to that, the less time we're going to waste. So let's get moving. And that's what and I still don't have a clue. I'm great friends with the person who led that Bible study. We've been friends for over 20 years now, almost 20 years now. I don't, I don't know how he responded. I don't remember, but that's how I showed up. And what I do know is I was loved and given space in that place to heal. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I showed up and then I watched from a distance to see how the leaders actually led. But having space enough to be that raw was healing for me.
Well, it does answer my question. And first, you answered by saying, like, how is trust rebuilt? It was on the other person, right? To own it, to be able to show that, while at the same time, that is kind of what I wanted you to go deeper on, is what you did within yourself, right? And
So,
maybe you didn't notice it at the time, right? And I don't think, unless you've been in shoes where you've held some anger and a trust being broken at a level that elicits that anger, I understand why you threw those cookies away.
Yeah.
Like, it makes perfect sense. While, do you recognize that for you to rebuild any trust, it took years and maybe it's still not there? Does it need to be?
I've talked a lot in this episode and I'm not hosting it, but
You know what's interesting though is, Jason, while you were thinking, I felt like, TQ, did you have a thought for that question specifically?
No, it was mostly as I heard Jason talk about the new leadership that he went to. I'm like, he showed up fully how he was feeling, and they responded with care. I think I think that's beautiful, because what one situation helped to spur mistrust to a whole demographic, right? Church leadership. Somebody else helped to bridge the gap. And that's one of the things I think is really cool about the story, that trust was rebuilt, even though it wasn't with the people who broke it. It was with somebody else who came along and met you where you were hurting. And I just think that's pretty amazing. You don't typically, when people are talking about trust and rebuilding, they talk about the relationship that they're in with someone else, and then that being repaired. But Jason, you're just talking about trust within you. that was rebuilt. And it's come, it was broken here, but repaired over there. And I just think it's a beautiful story that I hadn't seen many people talk about before, which is very cool. So that's what I
I
was thinking about.
absolutely agree to the beauty in this story, and even how right, trust was broken, and how I kind of want to give a little shout out to your wife, because when trust gets broken with somebody else, like, right, your trust was broken by somebody else, you're still in a relationship with your wife. Yet that didn't specifically happen to her, it happened to you. Yet she walked alongside of you, and right, there's marriage, there's things like that where she was like, "Yeah, well, we're gonna go to this," and you could be like, "No, no, no, we're not." And well, okay, like she still drug you along to do these things. The point I'm trying to make here is that, right, when trust gets broken, it doesn't just affect like me, right? Like, say, TQ, you break my trust. Well, that's not just between you and I. It has ripple effects. It goes out. And that's why I just do like shout out to Jason's wife for staying in her own character and continuing to be who she is through your broken trust. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My wife's a saint. I'll tell everybody that. She's
Yeah. Yeah.
literally an angel from heaven. And I'm a demon from hell.
So,
No, no, no.
that's not true either.
Cut that out. That
My
is not
gosh.
true. Moving on. Moving on.
Wow.
Jason, he mentioned watching, like he sat back and watched. And I think that's a part of the process as well. Especially when the trust has been broken. There's you want to see, is it going to be safe again? Right. And so that watching is this observation of, okay, what's the climate that I'm in? Where are the people, whether it's with the person who broke the trust or a group, it's going, okay, I'm not just going to blindly go into that, but I'm going to take inventory about where I am and to see how much trust I'm willing to give based on where I find evidence of trustworthiness, and I think that's a wise part of it, even though sometimes it doesn't feel wise. Sometimes it just feels like I'm waiting just to check it out. I do think that's a part of the discerning process.
With that, TQ, can you give us a little more of an example? Maybe there's those times where trust too much or trust too little. Well, that's kind of pretty much what you described. And in this instance where it would be unhealthy, right? Like someone has broken your trust on a very personal level, and then immediately going to trust too much again. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So if, when someone breaks your trust, and especially if you're trying to repair with them, the trust has been broken. Like even with things that we have around our house, if something breaks and I get the super glue and everything and the tape, I've got to figure it out. I got to put it together, and then I got to let it sit and see if it's going to stay. Right. And so I think the same process occurs with when we're in relationship and trying to figure out, man, am I willing to rely or put my full weight on this? And so you wait, you watch, I say I'll tell you about me. I wait, I watch, I'll test the water a bit. Once they've said, yeah, I've messed up, or we've got all that out of the way, then it's okay. Let's see where we're going to go with this. Because before I thought we were cool too, but then we weren't. So, and I'll put some things that I can give them trust with that won't hurt so bad if they break it. Because I'm trying to see if, I'm giving them, I'm believing in them. That's what trust. I'm going here. I'm putting my faith, not like spiritual faith, but I'm putting faith in you to carry this thing that I've given. And some of those things are very precious. Some of those things aren't quite as precious. And you throw those out. At least I will again. I don't know if this is the right way to go about it. I'm just exposing how I do stuff. And, see what they'll do. And if that goes well, then we may do some more.
Yeah.
So I have a question too, if I can ask. So do you think after that you ever fully trust again? Or are you going to be very, very cautious now with this person or these people? Because it was, it was a hard thing to go through. You're angry. Either one of you. I'm asking either one. Or Erica, if you want to join in. Just curious if you ever can totally go back without having some cautious thoughts.
It depends on how much, people say you got to earn my trust. So it depends on the price that I put on earning the trust. So if I've got some things that, like, I am looking for patterns, I'm not even just watching how they treat me. Sometimes this is what I tell a lot of young people who are dating. You're going, how do I know if I can trust this person? Well, I'm like, well, watch them in their worst moments. Watch them when all the stuff's hitting the wall, and you'll see everybody goes back to kind of default mode, and you'll go, oh, that's what's there. That doesn't mean that can't change, right? And so if it's been broken, I want to see how things pan out later. Again, like Jason said, they may mess up again. They're human beings, and I'm not expecting perfection, but I am trying to see, are you doing the work to be different than you were? And if you are doing the work, then I feel like I can work with that. We can do that, because I would want them to do the same for me. I mean, they're not the only people who break trust. I do it as well, and so I want some of that grace too, and the room to show, hey, I'm really coming to this thing differently than I did before.
Kelly, you earlier mentioned that your first thing was to shut down. While if you're in that process of all this kind of rebuilding that we talked about, and even TQ, I don't remember which episode it was, but I threw out the wonderful word of kintsugi to you guys, which that's exactly what TQ described with the rebuilding trust. Well, Kelly, what have you done specifically if personally, I shut down, what do I need to do next after I shut down?
Yeah, I think I need time. That's just my way of processing. I'll shut down. I need time. It's not gonna, we're not gonna, just pick up where we left off. And I need to sort through it in my mind and see, how can they win my trust back? And do I want them to win my trust back? And if so, how can that happen? But initially, I think I'm just the type that needs time. I'm sure other people are very opposite of that, where they just go right in and, and talk it through and be loud and yell or whatever. But my personal way of handling thing is I'll shut down. I need to think it through, and then I'll try to go back and like I said before, open the lines of communication where we can talk it through and find neutral ground.
Yeah, I want to reverse this really quick. And if someone can share a short example of a time when they have broken somebody's trust and then what they did to rebuild it.
Time where in my relationship with my wife, I had broken some trust. I'm not going to get into details of what those were, but I confessed, wasn't found out. Like I proactively said, hey, this is what has happened, with deep regret that she could feel and that I could feel. The other thing I did was I had a plan for, this is how things are going to be different. This is my plan to make things different. And does that plan sit well with you? Because it can't just be my plan. And so we walked through it, and I tried to live out the plan. And I did it mostly. There were some times I had to come back and I jacked it up again. But it was the same process, and fortunately she was willing to trust me, all those times. And so, but yeah, coming and going, I messed it up. Here's my plan for not letting this happen again. And how does that plan sit with you? Is there other things that you need to see from me? I know that I've wounded you. How can I help mend it?
That's beautiful. I just want to thank all of you for sharing these deep, vulnerable stories. Trust, it's hard, and especially when it gets broken. And even just here in this short conversation, we have talked about how when trust is broken, we have anger, we have sadness, we can shut down, our safety is compromised. there are so many emotions that encompass this topic. And I don't think the answer, we're not going to be able to answer fully fully regaining trust for every single person in every situation here on one podcast. While I hope that our listeners can, hear that this is hard. And these are the types of questions that we like to go deeper on. Like, these are hard. These are real life things we all deal with. Trust is huge. It is something very, very big. And I really hope that you heard what each one of these coaches was saying today and how the work it takes to rebuild that. Definitely heard a lot of, Kelly needs time, Jason needs space, and TQ, he might get angry real fast, but he'll hopefully come around.
He needs a bag of candy.
But we're not going to let him have any candy. Nope. And just recognizing each one of us is different. And when this happens in a relationship, the ability to communicate both ways what each person needs is huge. And go ahead, TQ, were you going to say something?
Well, I was agreeing with you, but I do, when you say we have all these things that we're bringing to the table, we've talked a lot about the person who's broken the trust and what they must do. But when I was talking about my wife, she gave trust back, and if that's going to work, it's gotta be both, and so I just wanted to put that out there because if I would have done all the things and for some reason she could not give the trust back, then it wouldn't work.
Right.
And I think
Thank
for
you.
another podcast in the future, we can also talk about trusting ourselves sometimes. Because I know like when I left my job, I didn't trust myself to do anything substantial anymore. So there's a whole other podcast we can go in for that too.
That does. Yeah. The internal trust is also huge. And, trusting ourselves before we can give that trust to somebody else. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And just a quick reminder, Kelly is owner and founder of Purposeful Pivot. She works with professional women who are experiencing corporate burnout and helps them transition into what's next. TQ with TQ Coaching Solutions will help you if you are stuck and need help getting into that next action step. And Jason with Jason Roten Coaching specializes in helping leaders transform into the life that they want, whether this be in their professional or home life. And again, I'm Ericka. I'm a relationship and trauma coach. And again, I just want to thank you all for listening today. We're really glad you did, and we're signing off until next time we go beyond the questions.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Questions. Be sure to subscribe so that you can stay up to date concerning future episodes. And if you would like to connect with any of the hosts on Beyond the Questions, their contact info is linked in the description below. Thanks for stopping by, and we will see you on the next episode of Beyond the Questions.